AI is not going to replace the human. AI is going to replace the human that's not using AI, right? I would much rather take the person that is proficient and cutting edge with AI than someone with a Harvard degree or something, right? Give me that person that can 10x their output that's proficient. The difference.
Welcome, everybody, to the ConTech Exec podcast. I am here today with Patrick Murphy, founder, I would say, I guess, of Togal.AI. Patrick, I saw you on the Build to Builders webinar this morning, and yeah, it's going to be great talking to you today. How are you doing?
Yeah, looking forward to it. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
So let's just let's just kick it off. First of all, we talked just a second before we started this thing. How did you get to the name Togal.AI? I just want everybody to understand where this comes from.
So the full name Togali means builder in the Irish language Gaelic. And as you can tell, my name Patrick Aaron Murphy. I'm Irish. A couple of the guys that started the company with Irish, and we said, "Holy cow, this is perfect, right?" It ends in AI. We're an AI company. It was an easy domain to get. We weren't out there like fighting for it. No one's ever heard of it. It means builder, so that was a cool name.
It was meant to be. Yeah, that was meant to be. Yeah, right. Absolutely. So you grew up around construction, coastal construction in Florida. Kind of started where a lot of folks start. A lot of times is kind of sweeping the floors and doing the dirty work, and then kind of moved your way up into that space. And then, what was it that you said, "Hey, there's got to be a better way," right?
It was coming back to construction after being gone in other industries and being in public service for a bit, that I came back with a fresh set of eyes, Robert, right? And realized that, our company had grown and blessed to be in a busy market, but the processes really hadn't changed. And I started going through our financials and was reminded that the biggest piece of overhead in our construction business, similar to most construction companies, is estimating and pre-construction. So I was like, what's driving that, right? So I started peeling back the onion, digging through, and realized that takeoffs were taking 50-60% of our team's time. Yeah. And it's hugely important, but it's not necessarily the most valuable thing, right? Our team would much rather be doing value engineering and scoping and bid leveling and negotiating with the subs and the trades and all that, not coloring, right? And that's what they were doing. And when I was a younger man, I used to work with my grandfather, who was head of our estimating department, and he taught me how to use one of these, right, scale rulers and a roller, and did manual takeoffs. And it hasn't changed a whole lot, right, with a mouse now, where people are just tracing. And as we all know, it's hugely important. You can't be wrong, or you own it, and it's repeated time after time, version after version, trade after trade, right? Any given job, you've got 150, 200 plus people doing the same exact thing because nobody shares. So that's when the aha moment went off. That, wait a minute, if a human can look at a set of plans and determine the difference in the bedroom and the balcony and the hallway, or the marble floor and the carpet, so can a computer if you train it, right? There are reasons we know that. So we basically spent 3 years aggregating data, hired 25 architects and engineers to label that data in a super precise manner, so we could train our proprietary algorithms to read it like you'd teach a 6-year-old or something. Like, hey, that's not a toilet, that's a sink, and keep correcting it, right? Keeps getting better and better. And now with millions of plans that it's ingested and learned from, it's now as accurate or more than a human, but it's doing it instantly.
Yeah, I think that's important to note, that the data, the training behind it. All right, it's one of the things, and I'm going to have a guest on in a few weeks, and we're going to talk about one of the worst things you can do maybe is train your AI with human bad habits. Yeah. You need to teach it good habits. I mean, like anything, AI is not going to I would say, when I talk about AI, I'm talking about if you're using a large language model, you have to understand there's a lot of different inputs going on there. And so you're going to get, it's not a reasoning model, right? It's really just a research model.
I always tell people it's a giant mirror of society, right? GPT or Gemini, it's everything, right? Sort of that's on the internet and all the conversations and research docs that we've had being fed back to us. And in our case, it's not, it's more compressed version of plans, but it is learning from that, right? There's a little bit of evidence, Robert, that we are starting to cross that chasm where it is starting to get creative, but in architectural, we haven't really seen that. It's really amalgamation of a bunch of other plans it's seen.
So, and I had a conversation with Christian Berger about this, and we talk about data governance, which I think is kind of important when, especially when you start talking about takeoffs. Okay, if you're an international company, you're going from one language to another language. Maybe they've got different sets of standards. When we start talking about building, internationally, and start thinking about things like BIM, and start talking about what units are called. Are we measuring in centimeters or millimeters? What are we measuring in meters, feet? Cubic feet, cubic yards, and specifically for specific practices and processes, like civil industry. Like if you're measuring in tons instead of measuring in metric, whatever. You've got all these different things. Have to be standardized. And this applies to anybody. I don't care, like scale wise. We talked a little bit today in that webinar today that you guys talked about, your data being, accurate, and you having that stand kind of you have a bit of a governance issue that has to happen with a lot of these mid-sized companies, because they're calling things all over the place. They maybe have 15 different spreadsheets on different information, and you're trying to pull all of it, and not all of it's the same meaning, and it's very, very difficult to kind of train an AI. You might be better off looking into a Togal, right? To say, hey, we've already got this thing trained, ready to go. Here, let's just use this.
Yeah, look, I think will be an increasing amount of use case where people could build their own agentic workflows or AI engines, and with tools like Lovable and Replit and others, where you can ramp up a tool pretty quickly. But if it's relying on data or things that are so varied and unique, like construction documents, obviously I'm biased saying this, but save yourself the years of headache and hiring and managing dozens of labelers to do this, and then continuing to train and retrain these models, because GPT, Gemini, these big public LLMs aren't doing this, right? They're into language. They're not doing the machine vision, and especially not on PDFs, and especially not on construction documents that we all know are different every time, right? At the end of the day, you can draw a toilet however you want. Like, there's no standard way to draw an electrical socket or this or that. Like, architects are artists at the end of the day, and they put legends in different places, and there's lines, and there's call outs, and there's tags, like all over the place. A lot of machine vision intelligence that goes into that, and it's hard to fake that, right, at the end of the day, and to get to the accuracy that's needed by our world, by construction. You can't be like 60-70% accurate. That doesn't work. You've got to be high 90 percentile.
Right. And that was the whole point. Like, one of the things I hated when I was doing takeoffs was I'd get a PDF from somebody, and it was like, well, there's no scale on this drawing. I can kind of extrapolate some sort of scale, but I'm still just guessing, right? But it always frustrated me when I always did that, because I was kind of an early adopter of the Procore when it first kind of came out, and I was in the industry. And it was something like, well, I sent you a PDF of this. I said, yeah, but I can't get any scale off of it. And when I'm trying to show you, I'm trying to redline this, kind of thing for changes. But it kind of leads me to that next part. You said, you can't really be 60% accurate, right? But I did bring up a question that didn't get answered. It's like, there are a lot of drawings out there. There's still maybe 70% done, maybe 80% done. There's still like this 20% gray area in a lot of these drawings. And it came down, the owner design team only had so many hours, and you kind of get what you get. And here's your boilerplate stamps on these certain little details, even though it may not necessarily be the detail that you're looking at. And so it creates what's called, gap in the scope, right? Also gap in the takeoff.
A couple quick things. I'd love to dive into that for a second. We are doing auto scaling. But we recommend highly the users do stay involved, right, basing off a door or some measurements. Easy to switch between metric or imperial, right, for users. We've got users in 30 some countries now, so a lot of imperial and metric system there. But your question I thought was spot on, earlier in the podcast about gaps, right, that we all see in the design process. And a lot of reasons for that, right? No one's pointing fingers, but things are moving quick, and developers and owners have high expectations, and we're all busy nowadays, right? But with those gaps, what can AI do? And I think this is going to be one of the coolest use cases of AI, because I believe in 5 years from now or less, if you want to go design a new building, it's going to be prompts. And there's going to be a couple basic inputs. It's going to be the address, the budget, the style of construction, and what you want to build. And with those parameters, you're going to get a full set of working construction documents. It's not just going to be a facade or a pretty picture and here's the layout. You're going to get the drywall assemblies. You're going to get the plumbing and the electrical and mechanical layouts, right? All of this has been solved, right? And if you just think of a simple, just say a 3-bedroom house with 3.5 baths and a 2-car garage, right? If you sketch that on a napkin, take a picture and upload it to Togal, we can give you the plumbing layout with really good certainty, because we have hundreds of thousands of single family homes and their plumbing plans. Right. And once you've seen hundreds of thousands, there's not an infinite amount of ways to run those pipes, right? There's like 2 or 3 general ways that you would do it, and there are certain, rules that you were going to follow with slopes and drains and vents and, size pipes, like. So now you can take all the learnings of all of the trades and apply that to the next building and automate this. Now, of course, you want the human involved to double check and look at it. But that's a huge breakthrough when you think about what that means for that owner that is dreaming up a job and doesn't know what it's going to cost, and all the variables that can happen. If you can take the learnings of basically all of construction, however many years back of data you have, millions, tens of millions of documents, and provide that with a click of a button, right? I mean, that transforms our industry, where months or years of design development and iterations are happening now are compressed to as quick as the human can think about the changes they want. Yeah. Right? And that's really exciting. And we're starting to do this, for example, for like drywall, where if you give us just a set of plans, we're going to predict that assembly of the drywall with really good certainty, because we've seen so many drywall assemblies.
Right. And a materials list is going to be pretty easy to come by when you've done 12,000 3,000 square foot houses, right? And you're going to go, hey, guess what? This is what it is. This is the package. This is what you get. This is best practice. That kind of thing. So I get it. Do you think that scares the hell out of the architect and designer world, because those procedural operations now, once defined by rules based upon an architect learning those things in college, now are automatically available to an AI?
Robert, I think all knowledge jobs should be very concerned. However, that doesn't mean that they're going away.
Yeah, I'll say, well, that's my job's pretty safe because I've got zero knowledge.
Yeah, I like it. But I mean, we all have Einstein in our pocket, right? We have access to sheer genius, right, in all sorts of realms, and whether it's law, whether it's medicine, whether it's architecture, design. Right, these models are changing so much and taking all of this data and compressing into a usable format that it's going to dramatically transform those roles as we know them. However, again, I'd be scared if you're not willing to adopt to the tools. That's where people are going to get into trouble and maybe find themselves without much work. But those willing to adopt are going to experience what we all know as Jevons paradox. Right? When things become more affordable and more accessible, it's used more, right? When we move from, candles to electricity and, incandescent and fluorescent lights, we used a lot more, right? There's a lot more lights today.
Yeah, I get it. And I like that assessment. And don't get me wrong here, okay? I use AI every day, right? And I see its progression. I get it. I see it. But I still say, when people use that analogy, like, well, the cotton gin was invented back in whatever, and I'm like, yeah, I get it, but the cotton gin didn't think. The cotton gin wasn't able to, possibly become reasonable or problem solving. That, it solved one problem. It couldn't solve all your problems. you know, that's the
This is the,
difference that we're
this is
talking about
the
here.
yeah. There's the big question: will humanity, right, as a whole, continue on this trend of continuing to solve the higher level human problems, or have we reached a point where we're sort of on parity with humans, right? And some argue, okay, well that gets us to this place of abundance where now computers can basically do all these tasks, and there's going to be some universal basic income or something, and we're all going to be able to,
Yeah.
I believe that we will continue to push the bar and find new tasks for humanity to solve that are more challenging and more human in nature to solve. But I think to your point, the pace at which this is going to happen is way faster than any technological industrial revolution we've ever been through before, right? They were decades and decades. This could happen in a 10-year
Yes.
period. And if you blink, you could miss it.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing that, when I start to think about, scope of how big this could get, where this could go, I definitely see what you're talking about. We've got the intensity of how it can already do so many different things with the level that it's at in 5 years, with even its own help of kind of resolving some of the issues behind it, whether it's in coding or things like that. I definitely see its expansion coming at us so quickly. So I agree with you when I say, look, if you're in architecture, accounting, you're in any of these kind of knowledge fields, right? You need to start embracing AI and realizing how it can, up your acumen, you know what I mean, and your bandwidth hundredfold now, because if you don't, you might as well retire, because in the next 5 years, I got a feeling it's going to be pretty slim pickings for those who aren't involved. That's the reason I get involved in it. That's the reason I work on ChatGPT every day. I work on Perplexity. I work on all the different, sites, and I try to educate myself as much as I possibly can. How do I create my own GPT? How do I get it to write things for me? How do I get it to, develop for me, do pieces and parts of my business that I don't need, I don't have time for, but I only have a small bandwidth of window for.
You're spot on. And I always tell people it's like anything. It's that first step, right? If you're training for a marathon, it's that first practice before you get into it. It's just scary. It's intimidating. Like, where do you start? So for those that haven't, I would just encourage them just start doing the research, start messing around on GPT, and just start asking questions, right? Just learning. Start messing around with videos, with agents, like you said. There's so much out there on YouTube as well to
Yeah.
learn, how to do this. There are all sorts of, social media portals have all sorts of, groups to follow. And everyone's heard this saying by now, but I will repeat it just in case, that AI is not going to replace the human. AI is going to replace the human that's not using AI, right? And I don't know about you, but as we're hiring folks and scaling up, I would much rather take the person that is proficient and cutting edge with AI than someone with a Harvard degree or something, right? Like, give me that person that can 10x their output that's proficient. The difference.
Yeah, I think that shows a bit of initiative anyway, especially if you're thinking about it. And no matter what level you're coming in at, if you're coming in as a project engineer and you say, oh, hey, and by the way, I've developed the agentic AI for the stuff that I do, and here's a little sample of it, right? Or if you're even a senior PM and you go, hey, by the way, I'm able to do the work of 3 or 4 senior PMs because I
Yeah.
can do it this way, right?
Yeah, you're hired. I'll give you a raise, right? Like,
Yeah, right.
I mean, in our construction company, we haven't implemented this. I don't want to scare anybody, but in our AI company, I tell everyone, if you can develop an automation or agentic workflow to automate your job or make it, much easier, we'll give you a raise and a promotion. Like, that's the kind of mindset we need everyone to take. And there's so much work for us to do. I would much rather people to automate the mundane stuff they're doing and upskill themselves, right?
Yeah, and being able to share that workflow with other folks too. I think
Exactly.
that's important as well.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So again, AI is the co-pilot, right?
Yeah.
It's you're still the pilot, but let's get down to when we start thinking of these maybe mid-level companies that are sitting there going, man, I've got to jump into this AI feature. I don't know a lot about it. My capacity, because like I talked about today, capacity is a huge thing for most construction companies. Most of these folks they're so busy building buildings and doing the things that they do. I don't care if you're a specialty contractor doing electrical work, plumbing work, HVAC, whatever it is. That's your real focus. That's your core focus. Those are your critical business practices. Those are things. And then you start to see that this development of this product is over here and saying, hey, technology is really kind of coming into play. Really got to find time. You got to find capacity to bring that in and say, hey, let's put this in place so that it'll help us. And then you always get that pushback. It's like, man, I've got all this stuff going on and I can't see how I can get to it. I can't see how I can spend X amount of dollars on this. I can't see how I can spend X amount of time, and then, the soft cost behind all that kind of stuff. How do I figure out how much this thing's costing me, right? You still get that pushback in the industry today.
And I get it. We're all busy. It reminds me of the saying, it goes something like, don't tell me your priorities, show me your budget and I'll tell you your priorities. Right? It's the same thing for this. Don't tell me you care about AI or being innovative or growing your business. Show me your calendar and how you're prioritized, and I'll tell you if you're doing that or not. And if you're dedicating and carving out, maybe it's not this week or next week, or maybe it's not even this year, right? Maybe it's January 1, right? We got to clear calendars. You're going to carve out, I don't know, every Friday afternoon from 3 to 5, whatever. Pick a day. Maybe not happy hour on a Friday, but find a day.
Different than a happy hour.
Yeah, carve out 2 hours, right? And it's just, you don't move that block. Like, that just doesn't get booked over, or you do it on a weekend, whatever, and you start this process. I haven't heard someone yet that has done it for a few months that hasn't reaped the rewards, put it that way, right? I'm not going to guarantee. So far, everyone's done it. And look, and if it's challenging and you got the resources, get a consultant, right? Find someone out there that's done this. Find a friend that's done it. But really, everything is out there at your fingertips. Take the time to learn it. It's not too late. You're not like behind the wave. This is like still the early, mid 90s of the internet boom or something, right? Too late or something. It's going to be with us for a long time. It's not going anywhere. So don't wait.
A lot of rumors around. Speaking of that internet boom, and we'll call it the .com bubble, those kind of things. Let's talk about that just for a second, because there's a lot of rumor going around. Hey, AI is maybe facing some real challenges, coming up, whether it be what they call compute, right, which is the ability to continue at the pace that it's going, and then there's the just adoption. But I'm talking about just compute. Infrastructure projects need to kick off. We need more chips. We need more of this. We need more of that. Do you see any of that affecting us in the near future? Is that something that's probably maybe more hype than it is anything else?
Look, I'm not giving investment advice or something like that here, right? But I don't know.
Yeah, we got a disclaimer. We'll put the disclaimer on it right now.
Yeah.
We are not offering any investment advice to anybody here. We're just kind of two guys talking. All right.
Right. I don't see how there's not some sort of a correction. I don't see how this sort of circular investment from NVIDIA to Gemini to OpenAI to Oracle back, like it's unprecedented, right? What's happening with that? I don't know how that shakes out. I'm not that smart, but it does seem frothy in many ways. However, it doesn't mean
I like that word frothy. Yeah, I want to use that one.
It doesn't mean with the internet, the .com, right? It went up crazy, it came down, but it's 10x, 100x bigger than it was then, right? So perhaps similar to crypto, right? It's up, it's down, right? There's got to be, people get excited. There's been a lot of free money and all that put into the system. Naturally, there's going to be bubbles, but I'd be shocked if in 5 years from now we're not at a much higher sort of baseline number. How we get there, ups and downs, I don't know. But long term, I would be long on AI, on this data center, sort of movement, chips, et cetera, more to this technological, revolution we're living in. Whether that, if you're in construction, if that's energy and grid, if that's data centers, if that's distribution, those are, I think, fundamentally going to be with us for a decade or more, where we have a lot of catching up to do.
Yeah. I hear a lot of people talking about water being a big issue, right? Do you see that as becoming a sticking point as well, especially when you start talking about these small municipalities and places these data centers are going up in?
I do, and how could it not? In energy fights, right? I mean, it's a matter of time before, and we've started to see a little bit of this, not to get too political here, but we've started to see a lot of pushback where data centers are going in into small towns, otherwise that had reliable, stable energy costs, and now it's going up dramatically. And they're saying, wait a minute, I'm subsidizing a data center for Google or OpenAI, whatever, this multi-trillion dollar company, and give me a break. No way. And the
It
same thing
seems
with water. Right, you're
right.
taking my natural resource from under my house to go cool that? Fuck that.
Yeah, right.
Excuse me, but like that's not going to fly very long.
It's not going to fly very long, right?
And there's more and more, as we know, inequality in our country. When you start seeing these data centers and what they're doing in these towns, and if that's not being spread equally, it's not going to be some real pushbacks.
See, and that's we don't want to get political on these things, but these are things that I think if you're a construction, especially mid market, let's say, and you're thinking about my next step, right?
Yep.
My next step is next technological purchase, those types of things. My next step in my technology stack. Maybe you're starting to see some folks go, hey, we need to take a step back. Let's make work what we have. Instead of adding to tech, those types of things, because there could be some real concerns here with some of these, these builds and these data centers, and what gets stalled here. Because I would think that it concerns me a little bit to think that some of these municipalities are going to start pushing back a little bit. And I don't know if there's a municipality that's going to push back, or if it's going to be the voters that push back. I don't know how that's going to work. But there's going to be pushback, and you're already starting to see it in a few areas. Now, my own personal opinion is, like, you've got a big tech company and you want to invest in your software. Well, you need to chip in for your infrastructure and not,
Yep.
I mean, quite honestly, if you need that much power, well, then supply it. Build a nuclear facility that then helps out the community that you're in.
Give back. Yep. Rising tide should be lifting all boats.
I agree with that. I agree that there's obviously definite advantages for these things to go in, but there does have to be a win-win scenario for this, kind of whole push. It can't be all one-sided.
It's got to be shared. Yep.
Right.
I agree. Where the rubber meets the road, where people are really seeing this, I think most importantly, right? All of a sudden their energy bill is up 20%. And they say, wait a minute, something's going on.
Right.
I think I don't know if this is where you're going, but I think for all the construction companies out there, just like we all grew up hearing, diversify, right? Don't have all your eggs in one basket. Who the hell knows what the next big bubble's going to be or the next big wave? But I think we should all be diversified in times like this, because with all the money that's been injected in the system, with all the uncertainty globally, with after a pandemic and what we've gone through, and just sort of changing geopolitics, there's a lot up in the air right now. It'd be silly for us not to be more diversified, all of us.
And I think, kind of getting back to Togal.AI, thinking about that, I think it would be unwise not to be looking into these products like yours that can actually save dollars and cents. I mean, you were talking about in the webinar how, you had that company had 2 days to get the bid out. They were using Togal.AI, and all of a sudden it's like, well, they won the bid because they utilized it. Again, implementing these tools, I mean, you've got to start really looking into that now, right?
You got to. And there was another study. It was a painting company in North Carolina, came to us, and they were using Bluebeam and been using it for 15 years or so, and they wanted to grow their business, right? So how do you grow your business? You gotta get more revenues. How do you get more revenues? You got to bid on more work. Well, short of going and hiring a bunch of estimators to do more takeoffs for this painting company, they said, let's try AI, let's try it out. And they came to us with a goal, which I advise all companies to have a goal in mind. What's your ROI you want to see? Is you want to grow your bids. In this case, the company want to grow, I think, by 20%. They said they could handle 20% growth. Okay, fine. They came to us within 60 days. They'd grown, I think it was like 60%. They'd grown their bids to the point where they couldn't get any more bids out because they didn't have enough painters.
Right.
Because they had capacity, but it was no longer estimating in Precon. That was the choke point for them. Now it was the painter. So now let's go solve that problem, and that's how you scale your business, right? Start getting more bids out the door, and have your humans focus on the more maybe gray area, the more complex part of the estimating process, and making sure it was scoped correctly. There are no busts, that kind of thing. But quantification and counts, come on,
The
let the AI
busted
do
bid.
it.
Always that busted bid. I always love that one. It's like, I just, which reminds me of the old days. The when you threw it out there and then you went, oh, we missed that, or it's like, that's not a, I always say, it's like I feel like 30 years of construction. Like I think I've felt like I've made like every mistake you could
Yeah,
possibly make. So this is the only reason I know anything. I
yeah.
made all the mistakes you could make.
Hopefully,
Um,
you have the money padded somewhere, right?
yeah, yeah, you want to find it somewhere else. But again, so that even, that would bring me on to another thing because that happens a lot too. All right. So I find that construction people, specialty trades, they're still working off of budgets, okay, as a productivity indicator. And I think it's totally wrong for you to be doing that. All right. Obviously, you need to keep track of the dollars and cents, okay? But as we move into this age of better data and more accuracy, we have got to move into an age of we need to be figuring out what productivity is. We're going to be in the next 5 years. We're going to be seeing one replacement for every skilled craftsman out of seven that retire.
Yep.
We're needing more help. We may not get it. We're hoping to ramp up the ramp up the bus to get everybody into the trade somehow, trying to figure that out. You also got the glut of folks that are in professional side of the, kind of the engineering side. Our STEM programs are pretty sad right now. We don't have a lot of folks going into construction on that professional side, the engineering kind of side of the world. And we need folks like that. Um, but where I was going with that is that data that we're putting into these systems is not necessarily indicative of what we truly need to know or what AI, if it's going to be our co-pilot, really needs to have to help us. Because what we call it pencil whipping, where the guys out in the field are maybe putting in their information. I don't care if it's their time card, their productivity, what happened on the field that day. It's not quite accurate, not quite representative of what went down. They've moved a few things around to make it look good on their end. And then when you get to the end, you find out, hey, this is this isn't going to go well, right? You've moved hours over, so your budgets look good on these, but these other line items are looking terrible. And so I think that's something that we need to address well because where's AI getting its information from? Well, it's getting it from humans.
Right. It's such an interesting point, Robert. You kind of zoom out and think about the trend, last whatever 100 years or so. Builders were builders. They were in the field. They were assembling. They were getting things done, working with their hands. There was very little paperwork. For whatever reason, it's moved now. A lot of paperwork, a lot of cover your ass, legal, insurance. You're in the trailer half the time or more, checking all these boxes, and overhead and bureaucracy has just ballooned like crazy. I hope, I'm hopeful that with AI, we're going to see that start to compress that paperwork, bureaucracy, legal, CYA type stuff, where you are going to have, just for an easy example, cameras on the job site that are able to measure, quantify, track what's being assembled, when deliveries are needed, what work really got done, right? Start to update the schedules automatically. And it's amazing the progress that's been made with some of these tools just in the
Yeah,
last,
I've
three to
seen a
4
few of
years.
them. Yeah, it's really
And
nice.
another 5 years, right? Just to think about where it could be. Not to even mention robotics and where that could be, but I'm hopeful that we're going to move back to a place where those that do want to work with their hands and have a tangible career they can point to and be proud of and say, hey, honey, I built that job, right? Where they really were out there, not pushing paper, where that's coming back around to that. And look, they might be assisted by AI. They might have a cool tablet and a cobot, right? Not a robot doing everything, but working alongside, so they're not going home sore every day. But I think that's the future we're heading to. We're working closer with machines, but that mundane, boring paperwork crap, hopefully, will be more automated.
Yeah. So, we were talking about that automation stage and how we're hoping that it turns around. I think the one thing that we always need to consider, and it doesn't matter whether you're rolling out a software or you've been using it for a while or you're rolling out a new machine that's supposed to help you pave roads better or whatever you're doing, right? If you have the cobot, and like say that, does the cobot, does that little dog help you on the job site? Is it an asset or is it just a liability that kind of looks kind of cool? I think it's that feedback loop that maybe a lot of times we're missing, right? And you kind of touched on it today earlier, but it was kind of like that feedback loop that says you've come to us with a goal in mind. We need an ROI standpoint. Well, that ROI, if you're going to figure out what that is, you got to have some sort of benchmark from the beginning to go, did we meet what we're talking about? It's kind of like saying, I'm spending X amount of dollars today. If I get this tool, am I still spending X amount of dollars or am I getting some return on my investment? And I think that happens so many times when new software comes in and it fails, right? Because maybe they don't have bandwidth or capacity to roll it out. It was supposed to help, but it maybe missed the mark, however that was. But maybe they, you know, where did it start to fail is always my question when I start to talk with some of my clients. I say, so where do you think that was? Because was it because you didn't train your folks up properly on it? Was it because you weren't really monitoring and measuring it after you had it installed to find out where people were tripping over it? Because I'm telling you, I know myself, if I start to trip up on something and I get about an hour, 3 hours into it and I'm still tripping up, I'm getting frustrated, right? And I may not want to go back to it, right? So that's the same thing that I see with all of these types of things. If I have a machine that just came to the job and I was expecting it to do certain things and it doesn't do it, and then that thing's going over there, I'm not going to use that anymore. I mean,
I think that speaks to, number one, the process of bringing on new technology or robots or automation or whatever it is what are you really solving for, right? What's that ROI you're looking for? It's what's the pain point? Is it time? Is it money? Is it a weak spot? Whatever, right? Like, be clear on that definition so then you can measure against it. Hey, did we save, I don't know, 20% time this week, or did we save 30% money? Whatever it might be. Have that metric to compare it against. Have someone that is responsible, right, for it. I always push that it should be more bottoms up than top down, right? Those closest to those pain points should be the ones that take ownership and pride in this so they can themselves grow. I mean, this is another point I think that's been sort of lost. All of our salaries are based on productivity, right? And technology, basically by definition, is making us more productive in 99% of the cases. So the more technology we're using, the more productive we are, the higher our salaries are going to be. And back to that example, if you have a PM that can do 3x, the amount of work as another PM because he or she's using AI, you're going to hire that person. They're going to make more money, right? That they're going to move up the ranks. They're going to make more money. And so having, that incentive culture, right, where someone's not going to get fired, like making that clear, we need you, I think is important. Having the ROI, and then two things here: the onboarding of these tools is important. I'd say the best, most successful softwares are those that don't really need a lot of human interaction, that are just so clean and easy. And, I don't know, my dad hates the iPhone, but personally, when I got it, I found it fairly easy to use and understand. It's a few buttons, it walks you through it, like you just kind of get it, right? Those are the good softwares that catch on, hence their, success. If you need a week or something to be onboarded, I know that seems like the old days. Now, some workflows are complicated. I get it. There's ERPs. There's some that are exceptions to that, but most of the newest, latest, greatest is really trying to make it easy, where it's a 1 hour or less type onboarding.
yeah, I agree with you. I think the ease of use is a big factor. I'm currently evaluating some softwares right now for those types of things, making sure that again, when it comes down to the user that's closest to the pain point, they're already dealing with the pain point of the problem. They don't want to have to deal with the pain point of the solution,
Right. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You want it
Great.
to
Very well
say,
said.
right? You want it to then become that ease transition in there. I do think you're right. You do need somebody. You need product champions in there, people that are closer to the solution that say, "Hey, look, this is what's working, this is what's not." You need to constantly be monitoring that, and you need to constantly be up. And as a technology provider, I think they need to be constantly listening to that feedback,
Yeah.
right? And a lot of times you hear complaints, and I hear it because I hear it from well, they don't listen to us. I
Right.
had some certain software. Well, why don't you use this anymore? I know you're making a change. Why are you making a change? Well, they don't listen to us. The software is stagnant. Legacy software is a big deal with that. Because probably they're dealing with technical debt in their product, and it just sits there, and they can't get past the technical debt to get to new solutions
Right.
or corrective solutions.
These on-prem softwares, these legacy softwares that are downloaded on your hard drive are really cumbersome. They're very hard. And it's actually getting harder and harder to find developers that can even work on that. So, that's another,
Different
something to
language,
think
right?
about for companies that in a few years, these legacy softwares are really just going to be so outdated because they're not going to have developers to work on it and make the changes. The longer they wait, the harder it is to move to a web-based tool and make that migration. So for the company owners and construction companies out there, sooner you do it, the better off you're going to be.
Right. So if you were talking to, I don't want to say a mid market, maybe even a little bit smaller than mid market, somebody that's trying to grow into that next level, like they want to make that next step. They're doing 5 to 10 million this year. They want to do 20 million next year. They really want to grow into that next level. What would be your, hey, let's just say they've got an ERP, right?
Mhm.
And they've been promised that the ERP would take care of all their woes and all those kind of things. Is there another tool inside there you think that they should have? And would Toggle be their best? Obviously you're gonna be a little bit biased about that, but I think that something in that pre-construction line is going to be something where, again,
Look, it starts with revenue and leads,
yeah,
right? If you're going to grow your business, sure, it's good to have a good ERP, but if you don't have money to count and track, it doesn't matter. Like, what's the point, right? Like, you got to have the leads, right? And getting those bids out the door faster. And for that, those companies, 5, 10 million in revenue, like it's often the owner, right, or his or her wife or spouse or whatever, doing those takeoffs at night or on weekends, trying to get them out the door. It's hard to then go focus on installing the work, right, or managing the team, or whatever it might be, getting to that next meeting where you can meet the next client. So instead, getting tools like Toggle that can now automate that takeoff enables you to just get 5, 10x more bids out the door, and now use your time for the more valuable things to grow. And you don't have to hire that estimator for $100,000 a year. You can do it yourself. You can, use these tools. A lot of our users are companies with, 1 to 5 employees, right? They got one license, it's $3,000 a year, and they use it nonstop. There's no limit. Beat the heck out of it, right? Like upload as many plans as you want. We got training, coaching, whatever, all that stuff to make it easy for you. But what we've tried to do is design our tools similar enough to the workflow that people are used to, that it's fairly intuitive. I would think it's the natural progression when you upload your plans, you label them, you sort them, you set the scale, you click a button, you get your takeoffs, right? You get all your automate, and then you can work on those and adapt it. And the user, like you said earlier, is still the pilot, right? We're just a co-pilot, right? We're just giving you that output quickly. But you can do all of your manipulation and move, for different polygons or things that you would need for your particular workflow, pretty easy. So again, I'm biased, but if you want to grow, you need revenues. How do you get revenues? You got to bid on more work. How do you bid on more work? You do more takeoffs, right? Why not automate it?
that's right. That's right. No, I totally agree with you. One of the biggest problems I ever had was it wasn't that I didn't have plenty of jobs to bid. I just couldn't get to them all.
Yeah.
Right? Couldn't get to them all. Right? So one of the things I did want to ask you, like, future for Togal. Do you currently have you're doing the takeoff? It's giving you your list of those kind of things. Is it giving you a scope of work kind of thing that you can then hand, like if you're a GC or something like that, you can then hand to one of your specialty contractors and say, hey, look, this is the scope of work for this job, or what's that look like?
So we're continuing to improve. That wasn't the sort of core of what we were trying to solve from the beginning, but it is a natural progression for us. And we have a thing called Togal Chat where you can develop that scope. It'll give you a recommended scope. You can prompt it, have questions. It's like any AI too. The more you use it, the better it's going to be, and it learns you, your business, your trade, right? So that's what we always tell people. The best, use case is if you have 10 previous scopes and you say, hey, Togal chat, here's my previous 10 scopes, right, that I just did this year, right? What's the scope on this new set of plans, based on these scopes that I've done in the past? Like, it's really good at things like that. So getting better at scoping, moving somewhat into pricing and actual estimating, right? We're going deeper into assemblies. So in a couple weeks, for example, drywall assemblies will be automated. We're automatically finding the legend, getting those wall types, extrapolating that across the entire set of plans. So now you're going to get a breakdown of all the different studs, wall drywall types, etc., completed throughout the job. So things like that are going to, you can imagine other trades for flooring, paint, plumbing, starting to extrapolate what's in the legend and what's written text-wise, onto the plan. So just really going deeper and deeper and automating more and more of the takeoff.
Yeah, absolutely. I always had trouble with like the flooring. Flooring was always a big issue. You got, did I lose you?
I'm back. I don't know what happened.
Yeah, I think I kind of skipped on us there for a second. Flooring was always a big issue. It's like, what kind of underlayment, what kind of, substrate am I going to have? What waterproofing, how far do I have to go up? What's the specific material? You had an ASTM number, then you had to put in the submittals for the specifics and all those kind of things. So it was always a big deal. But yeah, totally get it. Well, 45 minutes goes fast when you're talking about all this stuff, and it's been great chatting with you. I always do this before we go. Let everybody know, like, where can we get a hold of you? Where can people find Togal .ai?
Yep, Togal.AI, Togal.AI. You can reach me, PEM at Togal.ai. Shoot me a note, any questions, any thoughts, any improvements, any ideas you think we should be working on. We're open for it. Right? We're certainly not perfect. We're constantly improving, but team's growing, and we're hungry to grow and really improve the industry. I think in 5-10 years, our industry is going to be unrecognizable, and it's going to be a lot more fun, and I'm hopeful that we're all in the trades and GCs are going to be making a lot more money. So
yeah.
Let's grow some orchards.
I'm hopeful for that too, because I definitely know that this nation needs to see the wages go up for those folks in the trades, and just the folks in construction in general. I definitely see that because we have great demand for it. So you'd think that whole market would start to kick in when there's great demand. The wages have got to go up. So totally get it. Well, thank you, Patrick, for joining me today. I know you're a busy guy. I really do appreciate it.
Appreciate your time. Hope to see you soon.
So next time on ConTech Exec, we're going to be talking about some different things. We got some episodes coming up where we're just going to be talking about AI, maybe some of the elephant in the room we're not seeing, some of the things that we're not talking about, maybe not just on construction, but kind of the worldwide thing. I'm just kind of mixing it up a little bit. But until then, y'all be safe out there, and we'll talk to y'all next time.